This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
Start each season, it's something special again to look forward to, and I just think they're nice and shiny, and they sit there with their little green stems. They just really have become part of what summer's all about, and of course Christmas too. It's undeniably the Christmas fruit.
This is The Producers. I'm Dani Valent. You know the Australian summer has arrived when cherries turn up in the markets. Third-generation cherry farmer Stephen Riseborough is director of his family's CherryHill Orchards. Central and northern Victorian locations allow the Riseboroughs to produce cherries through the late spring and summer harvesting season, supplying local and international markets. What are the rhythms of the seasons, the challenges of growing a temperamental crop in variable weather conditions, and the satisfactions of producing a fruit that people anticipate with excitement and eat with passion and a fond sense of tradition?
Hi, my name's Steve Riseborough. I'm one of the owners of CherryHill Orchards. We're cherry producers based in Victoria with several locations. So the locations range from Cobram in the north through to central Victoria, Strathbogies, high country near Mansfield. That gets us through to mid and late season. And then we've got the Yarra Valley Orchards, of course, which are probably more well known because they're open to the public. And that's also where we centrally pack all of our fruit. So we're only cherries, and we produce from the start of November right through to February. We're in our 81st year, so it was my grandpa George who he found the farm, and with his brothers they part cleared the farm by hand in those days. They worked extremely hard, that generation. And then my mum and dad further developed the farm at Wandon, adding more blocks and increasing acreage. And then with my brother and I, we've taken on the business and expanded into those other regions I spoke about in northern and central Victoria. From a pretty young age, you know, there's always jobs to do, and we really enjoyed it. It was good, honest work, and, you know, a lot of variety of different work. And that's one of the good things about working in cherries or other fruit crops. You know, there's always a different job to do, whether that was as a kid, you know, helping with the orchard pickups, picking the fruit up on the tractors and bringing it back to the pack house, or, you know, it might have been stacking boxes or making boxes in the day. I used to get a piece rate and used to make good money. I used to work hard and work at night and all sorts of things, and that's how I earned some money to buy a new motorbike. It was good times. But, you know, when cherries start, it's on. It's all busy, and we go from just a few staff to a lot of people picking, people packing, and it's go. So it's changed a lot. You know, there was only us as the family in the old days helping with maybe one or two other staff throughout the year. And then you'd ramp up with, you know, maybe 50 or maybe maximum 100 pickers, and there'd be a dozen or so in the sorting. You know, these days we've got hundreds of pickers and there's about 100 people sorting. So it's a bigger changed environment which we're working in, but it's still the same fruit.
Cherries aren't just cherries. How do they grow? What conditions do they love and hate? And what do customers particularly look for at Christmas time? We
grow similar varieties and similar cherries to a lot of other producers out there, but we've really concentrated hard over the last, 10 or 15 years on just every year getting more focused and dedicated to being attention to detail with our pruning, our nutrition, how we handle the fruit, staff training, all those kinds of areas. When we bring new staff in, we really try and tell them the story and get them to be part of the action. And, if we've got pickers who are really careful and doing a great job, well, that shows in the final product. So we're really, again, appreciative of everyone chipping in and doing a great job. Blossom, it happens in September and October. And then, after blossom, the bees have done their work and that little tiny cherry, it's been pollinated and you've got cell division and those little green cherries that are on the tree, they're growing and developing with the seed inside, of course. And the early season varieties, they've got a lesser time between that blossom period to when they're mature. So you'll see early season varieties, they're maybe a little bit smaller. They can still be very sweet, but they're quite often a little bit softer. And so they come and go quickly. And then we move into the mid-season varieties like now, and they're really good quality and just that little bit bigger and more special. And that's obviously what a lot of shoppers want at Christmas time, those really big premium cherries for Christmas. So the locations that cherries need, they need to have good fertile soil, obviously, an abundance of water, which we're very lucky in these regions, depending on the year to year, of course. But then also frost-free. Cherries don't like frost. And areas that hopefully aren't too wet. So, in the really high rainfall areas, that can be a little bit risky in those spots. We've seen this year we're in a La Nina situation. There's a little bit more rain around than what we'd ideally like, so that reduces our marketable yield. But we're still picking, we're still packing, and the optical machinery, it sorts the fruit out. So what ends up on the consumer, the shopper's table, it's still good fruit. Cherries love nice, warm, sunny days. They don't like extreme heat. Frost is something to watch out for early spring. Luckily this year we didn't have frost of any sort. Hail and storms we don't like to see, of course. That can damage delicate fruit. But generally those sort of events are quite isolated. So if you hear of, storms or hailstorms in a certain area, it can be a case of your next door neighbour missed it and you get it, or the other way around, which is really unfortunate. But quite often it's not total devastation in one area. But whereas we get rain and it can split the cherries, and that can be quite widespread. And we've seen a little bit of that this season. However, I mentioned about the optical grading, that means that we pick the crop in its entirety, and the machine essentially, as it just runs through, it just sorts the fruit, and any split ones or defects, they just go into the waste bin, and the good ones spit out the other end. So it's pretty remarkable, and it means we can keep the show on the road and keep supplying our customers. Our marketable yield goes down, of course, so it's not what we ever want, but that's just part of farming, and it's part of the story.
Cherries are a pernickety crop that don't allow any room for error or relaxing. They need to be picked at just the right time, then cooled, sorted, and packed quickly. The rhythms and processes around harvest have been impacted by technology and also by employment patterns, which have changed significantly over the years.
Everything's really time critical with cherries. So, say you're picking citrus or something, I don't know all the details, but, you might be able to just have a bin of citrus sitting there, non-refrigerated for a certain amount of hours. With cherries, we have to rush them back into the receivable packing shed really quickly to hydrocool them. So there's all these areas where we need to be organised. We need to have enough tractors and enough equipment and people, staff ready to get the job done and help on forklifts and all those sort of things. So it's actually being quite organised, and that comes down to years of experience. So it's there's always a lot going on and to plan for. From a time perspective, it's changed hugely over the years. When I was a little kid, I think, my dad could mum and dad could comment better on this, but you would have seen itinerant professional picker type people that would get around and travel the different regions, pick cherries, earn good money, then they'd move on to maybe citrus and then apples and different crops around the country, and we'd see them return each year. Then we used to get a lot of backpackers and other locals, students and other people would work picking and packing. These days we're reliant on backpackers and students, but it's changed a little bit. The backpackers of old used to be perhaps more European. Today they're a mixture of people from all different countries, all around the world, which is great. But, the situation at the moment, a lot of backpackers and students had to fly home due to COVID, so it's a huge, huge issue where we've never faced staff shortages, but we're getting by. So it's a lot of work and a lot of effort, and we're really appreciative of that by all of our staff who are currently doing long hours to get the job done. Well, our staff are preparing the day before, so they're putting out all the picking lugs and getting the blocks prepared, ready to pick the night before, and then pickers are arriving on site 5:30, 6 in the morning, and the cool of the morning's great for both the fruit and working conditions when it's nice and cool. But really it's just about knuckling down and a bit of technique, which I think most of our staff, they're learning within sort of 3 or 4 days, getting up to a good speed, and the people who love it, they just get really into it, and they're picking with a piece rate. So there's a great incentive to consistently pick quickly and well, and that they do really quite well out of it. Every year's different. I mean, when it's all going fantastic, you get a real buzz. When it's a bit of a slog, again, that's just farming. We have to knuckle down. This year has been quite a wet, not as sunny as we'd like spring, but so that sort of held things back a little bit, and there's probably a little bit less fruit around this year than other years, and that's caused the price to go up. So that's interesting when we're talking with our customers and, getting organised for Christmas with the big build-up and big supplies into stores, of course. We're having conversations and trying to work out what sort of volumes we'll have, and then hoping that it just unfolds smoothly in the weeks in the lead up to Christmas. These hand-picked fruits, I think they're really special, be it the cherries or berries. It is a really delicate fruit, so our pickers are trained to be careful how they pick the fruit, keep the stems on, make sure that they're not picking off the buds for next year's crop. That's really important, and we can't have leaves or any debris in the cherries. So again, they're picking that carefully. So it's a really handcrafted crop from start to finish.
Weather variables have a huge impact on the yearly crop. So how does Stephen work to maximise yield and ensure quality?
Yeah, we produce a couple thousand tonne. It does vary from year to year, just depending on what the crop set's like. Depends on how many cherries are on each tree. Then, depending on the weather, depends on what our marketable yield is, which gets packed through the grading system. Yeah, it's quite remarkable technology. So there's conveyor belts that take every single individual cherry, and they rotate each individual cherry under a series of cameras. And those cameras are using both colour, black and white, and near infrared, which is able to actually penetrate and see through the skin of the cherry, and it'll show up where there's a little defect, or if a cherry's too soft, or if it happened to have a rotten spot, which we don't see very often. But it would tell the computers, or the computers are seeing those images and making decisions in thousandths of a second time, and rejecting that fruit so it doesn't end up in the first grade. The air jet, it just ejects the cherry from the conveyor into a like a pouch, and that's all nicely padded, and from the pouch it drops into a water flume, and that water flume's carrying icy cold hydro-cooled water, and then it's conveying by the water through to where the sorting lane is. And then it's really not sorting these days compared to when we had hand sorting. It's really just a final inspection. If there is any ones that the cameras might have missed, we pull them out, but then they're straight into the box, straight into a packed down room, which again is refrigerated, and they're into the box cold to lock in that freshness.
Stephen's cherries are available in supermarkets and fruit shops. But there's nothing like the satisfaction he gets from watching families pick and consume them on farm.
All the major supermarkets buy our cherries, but specialist greengrocers, they're fantastic customers of ours, and we love it that they care for their displays and put our branded cherries out on display for everyone. And look, we do the farm gate, of course. That's popular around Melbourne, but online orders too, but that's been a little bit of a challenge this year with some of the transit issues that's happening in logistics at the moment, but we're getting through those issues. But so there's a variety of places, plus we export about 40% of our crop as well.
It's not just that Stephen loves cherries and the daily challenges of running a farm. He also thinks it's important that farms are run by families rather than large corporations.
Glenn and I, we've worked really hard together to build and grow the business, and it's hard, long hours. It's a lot of demands. It can be really tricky at times with all sorts of different challenges, be it the weather, be it all sorts of different things. So no, I don't consider it's ever been on a platter, but I was incredibly fortunate to be born into a family that, I consider my mum and dad absolute top of their league as far as their running of the business and growing really good quality fruit. And, from a reasonably young age, that's what I'd always wanted to do. So we managed the farm. Our sister was involved for some years, but her kids, they help us out, which is great to see more family. And my kids are a bit young yet, and Glenn's kids, they're off studying and doing some other work at the moment, but hopefully, we can continue on as a family business. I think anyone in family business would say it's got its challenges, but look, I really think for farming and specialty farming like horticulture and in particular cherries, the degree of difficulty is right up there. And I'm quite passionate that family farming does have a future. I think corporate business performs well in some areas where, there's high degrees of replication. There's so much intricate detail with a crop like cherries that I just think it's really conducive to operate in a family business environment. And when I say a family business environment, we really do consider certainly all of our our permanent staff, but even our seasonal staff, we consider them at the time when it's busy and everyone needs to knuckle down and work together and get the job done. We really do consider that it is just a bigger, broader family of business. So that's the way we approach it. And I think there's a lot going for family businesses.
Farming isn't easy, but Stephen appreciates the variety, the challenges, the personal connections, and the pure enjoyment of seeing people love the cherries he's worked so hard to grow.
It's good variety. It's a challenge, so you never get tired of doing the same thing day after day after day. It's always changing. And people come and go through the season and year to year. We see a lot of people come and return back, which is terrific. We love having those same people back. But a lot of new people come, and that's always good too. Proud of our staff, of course, but just proud when visitors come or you see customers eating cherries and they're really enjoying them. Family's a big thing when we see family groups coming as visitors or buying cherries, and it's actually part of their family occasions or traditions. That's really good to see.
Cherries are a signal of summer. They're a staple on the Christmas table, shiny and happy and full of promise. They're also a challenging yet satisfying fruit to grow, especially when nurtured in a family environment, as they are at CherryHill Orchards. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Dani Valent. Stay tuned as we talk to some of Australia's best farmers, makers and growers. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or contact us via deepintheweeds.com.au.